And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious edition of the Assembly Call tonight, or this afternoon, I suppose. Your Indiana Hoosiers beat Northwestern 68-61 to move to 1-0 in the Big Ten. In a game that was really tight throughout the second half. IU took a bit of a lead at the beginning of the second half, and really from there, it was a 1-point game at the under 12 timeout. It was a tied at the under 8, and Northwestern was up by a few at the under 4, and IU really rebounded to play well down the stretch and come away with the win in a game that Juwan Morgan missed the last few minutes of the game with an injury. They were working on his shin toward the end of the game, so we'll see what, if anything, Archie Miller has to say about that in the post game about the injury for one of the team's stars and for a team that just seems to be snake bitten by injuries, quite frankly. But they do, find a way to win, and that's really at least in the immediate term, what the important thing was about today's game was to really get back on track and get a win in a Big Ten game. So that was certainly important. So we'll talk about that here today on the show. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, here with Ryan Phillips, and we'll break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And we'll start today's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Jared, who can't be on the show, was texting in a variety of suggestions
He
to
texts
Ryan.
way too much when he's not on the show, by the way. I think
Yeah,
that's fairly obvious.
we're saving him from himself when he's on the show. But I will say, I will actually, I do think what he sent in for the banner moment made sense, and it's likely one that we would have picked anyway. But we'll give him the credit. But as we mentioned, IU comes out down 61-58 out of the under 4 timeout. Juwan had been really down on the court Uh, during the entirety of the timeout, and the footage they showed on TV looked like he could really barely even walk or put weight on his right leg as he got over to the bench. And so for a pretty young team who hasn't had a ton of experience playing together, at least in the current construct with guys healthy, it was impressive to see them come out and not only win the game, but they responded really well to that scenario. Romeo immediately drives for a basket, then comes up with a big block on the other end. Devonte gets fouled, hits both free throws, which was a rarity for IU yet again today. Duron Davis had another block there, but Northwestern scored in the inbounds. Justin Smith hit 1 out of 2 free throws, and then after a couple kind of ugly possessions, Romeo gets a 2 to take the lead. They have a nice press break that leads to a Justin Smith layup. And then, Finney hits 1-2 free throws down the stretch after a miracle banked in 3 from Vic Law. And IU survives. And that was really what it came down to at that point for me, was that this team really just had to find a way to win this game, find a way to survive. And the fact that they started that stretch from behind and came back without Juwan is something that, certainly if he's going to miss significant time, that kind of puts a whole nother, lens on the season. But assuming that he comes back relatively soon, I think these guys having confidence that they can do things without him on the floor and be able to come and find a way to win a close game in some tight moments without him will pay dividends down the stretch. And we know all too well how last year things just really devolved when he wasn't on the floor, and everybody would just kind of stand around looking at each other. And I think as fans, you'd sit around kind of wondering, like, who's going to score for this team when he's not on the floor? So certainly not a positive by any means that he couldn't finish the game on the court, but a positive for the team that they found a way to get a win in spite of that, and hopefully he'll be able to rebound quickly and be back and playing again for IU. But that to me is the banner moment. They're going to have stretches if he gets in foul trouble or things like that during the course of the season where they're going to need to score without him on the court. And as big as a factor as he was in the game today when he was in there, I think it should give the supporting cast a lot of confidence in what they can do when he's not there. And today's Hoosier Proud banner moment is brought to you, as always, by Hoosier Proud and Home Field. At homefieldapparel.com, you will find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel. And at HoosierProud.com, you will find great state of Indiana themed apparel, as well as our official Assembly Call logo shirts. Both brands, Hoosier Proud and Home Field Apparel, were started by an IU grad, and all apparel at both sites is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. And with Christmas on the way, you should consider finding the perfect holiday gift for the IU fan or IU or Indiana resident in your life at homefieldapparel.com and HoosierProud.com. Plus, Indiana's birthday is coming up, so start picking out your favorite Indiana tees and get ready for Hoosier Proud's Indiana birthday sale on December 11th. And don't forget to use promo code Assembly at checkout today for 15% off your order on either site. That's promo code Assembly at HoosierProud.com and HomefieldApparel.com. And actually saw from a few of the folks that we follow on the show that Home Field had a booth or a table set up at the game today. People talked about how nice it was to be able to go and kind of see see the shirts and the sweatshirts and that in person. And so I speak highly of what they have. I'm actually wearing one of their t-shirts now. So if anybody can go and check those out, we would strongly suggest you do that. All right, so now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts on the rest of our team, which today is just one man, Ryan Phillips. So, Ryan, any rants for today? If you wanted to take an officiating slant here, that certainly wouldn't be out of bounds, but I'll let you decide. I'm not going to be Jared and tell you what you should make your rant about. You can make your own choice.
I mean, God, the officiating in the Big Ten is just so bad. It's so bad. And I thought there were calls both ways that were bad today, but calling 5 offensive fouls on screens on Indiana was just ridiculous. But no, what I want to talk about is Romeo Langford. And I mentioned this on Twitter. What shocks me, given his age, is how just he always seems to make the right decision, whether it's taking the extra dribble to get closer to the hoop instead of shooting a floater and going off the rim, whether it's knowing where to take the angle on a guy when you're driving on him. I'm consistently amazed. And today he finished with 20 points, 5 rebounds and assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and he had the 2 turnovers, but 8 of 13 from the field. I mean, and he had that huge bucket late for Indiana where they ran a set, and it was a great offensive set. They ran him off a couple screens. They had some dribble handoffs up top, and finally got it to where he was isolated with everybody out of his way and just drove one-on-one on Law and was able to get it, get the ball in the hoop. I'm consistently amazed at how good and how polished he is. And when Juwan Morgan went out, some freshmen would shy away or they'd try and force things. And he didn't do either one of those things. He embraced the moment, but he didn't force shots. He went and got good shots. And that was what impressed me the most about him today, was just making the smart decision, getting to the basket and finishing close. He's not a guy who's just going to stand outside and take lazy threes, which is what a lot of freshmen do in these situations, because it's tough in college to get to the hoop. And he just attacked relentlessly. And he certainly, I thought, was a player of the game for me, especially after Juwan Morgan went out.
Yeah, I really thought it was one of his better games in some regards. He really seemed, there was a particular possession that I wrote down early in the second half, where he was really kind of, they were, again, not to circle this back to the officials, but to circle this back to the officials, they were letting a lot of contact go on the perimeter of really just, kind of allowing guys to rough up ball handlers kind of however they wanted to.
Yeah, it was, you could rough up ball handlers, but you couldn't set a screen on a guy and not like stand there for like 3 seconds after and hold.
Exactly. Well, and so one of those plays, like, he really seemed to embrace being allowed to do that and really got into Law, and really from the moment he crossed that floor, it really kind of bodied him up a little bit. And to me, that was, it was a case where he could have, he had some defensive lapses. That one of the last buckets that Northwestern scored on that inbounds play, he kind of, was asleep for a second there and let them lob it into Law. But I thought in general, he played physically on the defensive end and really seemed more in tune there. I do think he's not going to be perfect on that end of the floor, as very few guys are. But I thought he took some strides there and showed a little bit more of what he showed even in like the exhibition season or some of those plays where he was, trying to be more active, getting passing lanes, and just seem more attentive on the defensive end, and certainly made some big buckets. Ended up being 8 of 13 from the floor, 8 of 10 or 7 of 10 on twos. Did hit a big 3 off of to end a possession where McRoberts dove and saved the ball, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. Had 5 rebounds, which was second on the team. And quite frankly, this was a night an afternoon when, IU stars were the stars. Langford and Morgan combined for 37, were the only 2 guys in double figures, both 8 of 13 from the floor. Juwan with the double-double, and I think he even led the team in assists with 3. So those guys really stepped up in situations. I thought Juwan was more active from the get-go, did a better job staying out of foul trouble despite Northwestern really force-feeding Derek Pardon, and it allowed him to play a little bit more aggressive in the second half, knowing that he only had 1 foul in the first half and that he had a little room to do that. So I thought that was a good adjustment. Ryan, anything else you saw in particular from Juwan today that made him so effective?
Well, I thought that, Derek Pardon was beating him like a drum, but Derek Pardon was beating everybody like a drum. I thought the defensive intensity was there. I just think that Pardon was getting to positions, and he made some ridiculous layups. I mean, that skill, you practice those, but he made them, spinning, throwing them high off the backboard, all that stuff. I mean, he just was in a zone today. He was Pardon was 11 of 15 from the field and was just kind of unconscious for a while there. But what I loved about Juwan was also the rebounding. He had 12 rebounds, and he was really aggressive going for rebounds and did a great job on the defensive end, particularly just making sure there weren't second chance opportunities. And Northwestern wound up with 9 offensive rebounds, but I feel like a lot of those came from long shots that bounced out. And really with long threes, it's, long shots give long rebounds, and it's really hard to track a long rebound. I felt like in the post, he was really commanding the boards and making sure that Pardon didn't grab extra rebounds after he got shots up.
Yeah, Juwan played, IU really, the most separation they got was really end of the first half, kind of beginning of the second, and really when they started to take a little bit of control of the game. Juwan scored 4 straight at the end of the first half, and I thought, really asserted himself. But again, that doesn't happen if he can't find a way to stay on the floor. So there were probably some situations where he wasn't as aggressive as he would normally be defensively. But I think, the reality is with this team, that's kind of how it has to be. And again, we'll see what happens with him from an injury perspective and try to figure out, really what his status is going to be for the Penn State game. But I'm not sure that's something we'll know. We'll kind of watch Twitter and see if Archie says anything after the game, but could be something where they still want to evaluate him. So one other quick thing to hit on before we go to our first break, turnovers. So that has been, the big issue coming out of the Duke game, reared its head really at the beginning of both halves today. 4 turnovers by the under 8 timeout in the first half, 4 turnovers by the under 12 timeout. So in the first 8 minutes in the first half, and then 3 by the first media timeout in the second half, but then only 3 the remainder of the half, I believe, if I captured it correctly. So Ryan, turnovers still kind of an issue. There was a stretch in the first half or in the second half when they got up 5, had 2 chances to extend the lead and turned it over twice in a row. Those were kind of, backbreakers a little bit, really prevented them from being able to blow the game open. But anything turnover wise that you saw them doing differently today, other than just not giving it away? Did you see anything schematically that they might have done differently to try to correct the turnover issue?
I don't know if there was anything schematically. It just seemed like guys were more focused and into the game today. There was more of a connectivity between players. And I think that was the big thing. I mean, guys were following through passes. They were looking, when guys would come off cuts, instead of just kind of lobbing the ball out there, they were almost trying to pass it through the guy. They were getting it to him, as opposed to, I thought in the Duke game, there were some lackadaisical passes where they were just kind of lobbing it out there and hoping the guy went and got it. There were a couple, we saw trying to get the ball into Juwan in the post against Duke. They just kind of toss it up. Well, if you toss it up and there are some super athletic guys around, they're going to jump out and go grab the ball. So I just felt like there was a more of a purpose to their passing, and it was like guys knew where they were supposed to go with the ball. Very rarely did you see guys kind of stutter and look around. And the guy, honestly, the guy I saw do that the most, it sort of looked confused, was Zach McRoberts, which is really shocking, but he hasn't been on the floor that much lately. So I think it's maybe just a symptom of him trying to get back into it. I saw some guys take some bad shots, but Justin Smith took a couple bad shots. Devonte Green took a couple bad shots, but Fitzner took a couple bad shots. But again, that's going to happen in the course of a game, particularly a tightly contested game. You're going to get some guys trying to force things when the offense isn't necessarily on fire. But in general, the turnovers I thought were very well cleaned up. And a couple of those turnovers are offensive fouls that I thought were terrible calls. So
yeah, that's 5 of them right there.
And so to have 13 turnovers when 5 of them, there were 5 offensive foul calls. I think 4 of them were really bad. One was, you can call that, but if you're going to call that in the Big Ten, that's kind of weak. So, I mean, to think about it, non-offensive foul calls, there were 8 turnovers, which given the beginning of the game, that's not bad. And given where they've been, that's not bad. So I think that it was improved today. And it just felt like the team was more connected today. Like there was better chemistry. They all were kind of on the same page of what they were trying to do. and they look like their cuts were harder. They look like they were more in tune defensively as well. So it all kind of worked today and all kind of connected today. So I thought that was what forced the turnovers down a little bit.
Yeah, and Archie had mentioned coming in, it had been a couple of their better days of practice in the last couple of weeks. So maybe some of that translates into the game. I think two things on what you said. The McRoberts stuff was interesting because I saw the same thing you did. You know, he typically, though, gets the defensive treatment of really having guys back off of him and kind of just letting him do whatever he wants to do and daring him to shoot. I thought Northwestern really got up into him, you know, not to force him to really put the ball on the floor, but I think just to make him uncomfortable. And then on the moving screens, you know, that's one of the things that's been talked about. A lot of those were on dribble handoffs and things like that. They've talked about making that one of the dreaded point of emphasis calls heading into the season that everybody will ram into the ground in November and December and then forget about by January. So maybe it'll be that when it comes back
Right.
around. But it definitely felt like that. And I thought Northwestern was doing a lot of the same thing early on. But I guess apparently the way to get it called is just to, as the defender, just run through the screener, and then that makes it look like the screener did something to you. So, just a little tip for those of you out there playing. Yeah, we'll get into that maybe a little bit more later. But coming up, we're going to continue our breakdown of IU's 68-66 win over Northwestern, and we'll point out the meaningful moment you might have missed and go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 68-66 Big Ten victory over Northwestern. And it's time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed, or today's rather. See, this is Ryan. This is where you would normally complain about the early game time, but I'm going to complain about it now because I keep saying it that it's night.
Go nuts. I honestly was shocked how well played a game it was for how early it was. I was surprised. It was
it was pretty good back and forth. So there were two moments that stuck out to me. One of these is one that Jared sent in, although I think it's one that I don't know that it was that people might have missed it. So I'm going to go with the one that I had circled first. There was a play in the second half. Devonte Green had a chance to go 1-on-3, did not. Backed the ball out, kicked it over to Fitzner, who kicked it back to him for what would have been a long three, but one that we've seen him take over the course of time at IU. He passed up that shot. They ran offense. Romeo eventually scores and puts IU up 48-47. And I thought in a game that Devonte played for the most part pretty well, and I think gave you the full Devonte Green experience, I would say, over the course of time. Had some really good defensive plays where he was active on that end of the floor and played well. Had a couple drives to the basket where, kind of made something out of nothing. Had some nice passes to Juwan that led to baskets. And made a couple big shots over the course of the game, made a couple big free throws late. But as you mentioned a little bit ago, he was one of the guys that maybe took a couple ill-advised shots and some things like that. But I thought overall he played well, and I thought that particular possession was one where he really played smart. IU reaped the benefits, and he seemed to do a better job of picking his spots of when to really be aggressive and when to dial it back a little bit. Any thoughts from you on Devonte's play? I thought he was a good spark off the bench today for sure.
He was, and one thing Devonte Green did was he made his free throws too, 2 out of 3, which is big, and he's got a good release. So I think
2 out of 3 on this team is
and the one he missed rimmed out, so I'll give him a little bit of credit there. But he's one of the few guys that looks confident going up there. So that alone is shocking. But no, I thought you're right. I thought there were moments where it looked like we were going to see Devonte Green do a Devonte Green thing and take it crazy. And then he just settle down. Let's get into the offense. Let's work it. Let's make a play. And I thought that both of those opportunities, when he was 1-on-3, I was thinking, oh God, here we go. And then when Fitzner gave him the ball back and he was 30 feet out and he kind of looked at it like, and he pulled it back, calmed himself down. And so I did think that those were some solid moments for Devonte to sort of see the maturation and the growth there. And they were right on the show on the broadcast. Is the thing about Devonte is he can get things done that nobody else on the roster can get done. I mean, he is a playmaker. The problem has always been the other side of the equation when he's not making plays and he's making plays for the other team. He didn't have a turnover today. And that's a positive. He had maybe one bad shot or 2 bad shots, but I think in the flow of that game, they weren't terrible shots. They were kind of things that maybe we've seen him make before. And so it's not too shocking to see him take those. But I thought it was a better game from Devonte. And he only went up with 6 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, and a steal. Not a great line. But particularly late in the game, they needed somebody to sort of steady things a little. And I thought he was that guy. He really did kind of settle things down and help them get the offense. And he helped get offense for a guy like Romeo as opposed to trying to get his own offense.
Yeah, the other moment that we wanted to hit on is one again that I don't think people will have missed or forgotten about, but it was the kind of errant pass on the side. McRoberts dives into the bench to save the ball, and eventually leads to a Romeo 3. McRoberts, as you said, I thought they were really aggressive in the way they defended him and really tried to make him uncomfortable, but did have 3 rebounds, didn't score, didn't shoot, played 24 minutes, and did have some solid play. And I think in general, you're starting to see, of course, Juwan Morgan goes down in a game where I'm going to say this, but you're starting to see, having that depth pay dividends a bit more for IU, where you're seeing guys able to get quality minutes off the bench and figure things out. I thought he gave a nice lift. Devonte, we touched on. I thought Duran had, particularly in the first half, and then late when he came in for Juwan, they had some nice moments and really provided good depth. But I don't know if there's anything else to add about the McRoberts play. Certainly feel free to do that if you want, or if there were any other moments or situations that really stood out to you from the game.
No, I think I agree with you on the depth thing. Is that this team, for how unhealthy it's been, if they get a guy, I honestly, I'm really waiting for Race Thompson to come back, because, and somebody asked in the chat here, well, a concussion takes a week to get back from in the NFL. Why is he taking so long? Well, because in the NFL, guys shouldn't be coming back from a concussion in a week. Quite frankly, they force them back into games. And quite frankly, Indiana should take its time with Race, because if you get a concussion, there's a high likelihood of getting another one if you're not fully healed from it. And that turns into a much longer problem with the protocol. So let him take his time coming back. That is absolutely 100% necessary. But he's a guy who I really want to see on the floor. I mean, he's a guy who can do some things and can really help this team out depth wise, and really give a guy like Juwan Morgan a spell and give him a rest. And so you're right, the depth makes this team better. And as we see those guys who have been out play more with the other guys, I think that we're going to start to see the team just look better in general, because you're just going to see more of that on-court chemistry developing. This was not a perfect game. We're happy with the win. I think both of us are, but there were problems and there were things that need to be addressed, and the things that need to continue to get better. But it's a step in the right direction after that Duke game to see these guys not turn the ball over as much, playing a little better, see some of the depth out there, see some of these guys look more acclimated to playing more minutes. It's like a guy like Evan Fitzner has not looked great the last couple games, but he's also played more minutes than he ever has in the last couple weeks, because he's been thrust into basically being the first guy off the bench. And, he's probably needs to catch his second win on the season, because he has not looked good the last couple weeks and has looked really out of sorts.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. But I do think, the Race Thompson thing is interesting. I've seen people ask that as well, about how quickly he can come back. And what we don't know a lot of things about the situation, obviously, but we certainly don't know what, if any, history he has with concussions, and that plays a big role into it. And it's not like those to me are injuries that no two are the exact same.
Yeah,
they're
each one is
respond to them the same. And so I think for anybody to say he can or should be back at this point, this is a case where, not to get on a soapbox here, but the NFL, if you watch plays, you watch Alvin Kamara get drilled in the head by a guy launching himself the other night and no penalty gets called. To say that the NFL puts the player's best interest at heart with some of these penalties and rushing people back to the field, that is not the measuring stick that I want to use to figure out when a guy should be coming back. And so,
yeah, exactly.
I will definitely trust IU's medical staff to make the right call there, and make the right call, not just for for IU, but for Race Thompson as well. So, all right, I'll climb back down now. But you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and now we'll head inside the numbers on the game. We touched on turnovers a little bit. The flip side of the turnovers was IU did a really good job of turning Northwestern turnovers into points in the first half. I think they had 12 points off turnovers, off of 9 turnovers by Northwestern in the first half. Northwestern only turned the ball over twice in the second half, although shot the ball a lot worse. So maybe that was a trade-off. I'm not really sure. But I did think that allowed IU, at least in the early going, to get into some rhythm, get some easy baskets offensively. Ended with 14 points off turnover, or 16 points off turnovers. So did get, basically turn the two Northwestern turnovers in the second half into 4 points. So that was important. Points in the paint again for IU, 42 points in the paint. They had 26 at halftime. They were 15 of 20 on twos in the first half. So really a concerted effort again to get the ball inside. IU shot just 3-3-pointers in the second half, finished 3 of 11 from three over the course of the game.
I'll give Northwestern credit. They played really good defense. They were pressuring Indiana all day, all the way out to the perimeter. I know they were talking about on the broadcast, they want to pack it in and let Indiana shoot. Indiana wasn't getting good looks on the perimeter, and that's probably why we didn't see a lot of shots fired up. Also, I would mention there was no transition game either way. So both teams were getting back on defense, and despite the turnovers early. And I was impressed that neither team got going up and down with the defenses just clamping down sort of and getting back.
Yeah, I really think almost all the transition points came off of live ball turnovers going the other way, because I don't really recall IU getting others off of misses, things like that. From a rebounding perspective, IU just had 3 offensive rebounds. Northwestern outscored them on second chance point 10-2. IU's bench, as we said, stepped up. That was 13-2 there. I guess, at some point we have to address the free throw shooting, as much as we don't want to. And as terrified as I'm sure everybody was going down the stretch when after the review, so that, the guy who was standing right on top of the play and missed the call could be bailed out by the review. And IU gets the ball back, and it's like, oh, they're going to have to shoot free throws. And so everyone collectively like chewing off their fingernails. But, so IU ends up 11 of 19 on the day, free throw shooting, 10 of 17 in the second half, just shot 2 free throws in the first half.
Started or like 4 of 8 or something. And
I think they were 4 of 8 at one point, because they missed 4 straight at one point in the second half. So it was kind of a, Finney ended up 1 of 4. Morgan was 1 of 3. Justin Smith 4 of 6.
Juwan Morgan. I mean, Juwan. Let's jump right in. Juwan Morgan needs to be better shooting free throws. Like he's gonna go to the line a lot this year, and it's almost like he stands there and doesn't bend his knees and just kind of fires the ball up, and that's unacceptable. He needs to work on his free throws. He needs to. I mean, if he's let's assume his leg is fine. He needs to get in the gym, shoot 1,000 of those tonight, and work with somebody, not just stand there and shoot, but work with somebody, because he's going to be at the line a lot this year, and he's got to make his free throws. It's there's no excuse for a senior not making his free throws. Rob Finney missed his first 2 early, then late in those pressure situations, made 1, missed 1. Okay. But the first 2 he missed early, unacceptable, but late pressure situation, freshman, But Morgan has to make his. There's no excuse for not making his free throws. He's a good shooter. He should not be missing as many free throws as he missed this year. He's got to get better at that, and he's got to work on it. And I'll say this again. We've talked about on the radio show, Archie Miller's teams at Dayton did not shoot free throws well. He needs to change whatever he's doing as far as free throws go. And he needs to seek outside help. And I'm not, promoting myself as I don't care if he brings me in and hires me. I would love to be hired by Indiana basketball. Archie, call me. But I would say that he needs to get somebody in there who can specialize in working with these guys on free throws, because it's become a problem, and it's something that needs to get better. 11 of 19 in a conference game, shooting 57.9% from the free throw line, not acceptable. They shot 55% from the field today and almost lost because they left 8 points at the free throw line. Like, it's an issue, and it needs to get better.
Yeah, certainly had IU lost this game, that is what is getting pointed to, rightfully so. The turnovers were kind of frustrating, and the times that they came early in the halves were not ideal, but that wouldn't have been what I would have said lost them the game. Free throw shooting, though, would have certainly fallen in that category. I think they just had chances to extend the lead or chip away when Northwestern had a lead, that they just, 4 free throws in a row. And I think within like a minute time span was, that to me is, I really can't explain it. They're 3 of 11 from 3, 11 of 19. Is this just not a good shooting team? What's your general sense of that after, we're 7-8 games into the season?
They were shooting from 3 well in the non-conference, a little bit. I would say continue to let it develop a little. Romeo hasn't really gone off from three much this year. Finney has kind of been hesitant to shoot the last couple games, as has McRoberts since he came back. But once those guys get back, it's hard. Like we've mentioned, it's hard when you've been missing guys to sort of know what the identity of the team is. I'm not really worried about the shooting. I thought Northwestern was all over the 3-point line today, and really Indiana did not get clean looks, and that was to me what the difference was there. Also, when you're having kind of a disjointed offensive performance, I thought the offense was fine today, but it wasn't what they want, which is to get up and down and get a little more in transition. If they're doing that, then everybody's going to collapse in the paint and you're going to get clean looks from three. I thought a couple of the threes today were forced, and it was just sort of like, well, I'm kind of open, so let me take it, as opposed to catching it in rhythm and firing. I mean, Fitzer was 1 of 4. He's a guy who, if he has open looks, he's going to nail them. He didn't get open looks today. He had a couple, and I thought his first look from the corner when he came in, probably cold, missed it. He was open. He made his other open three, and then the other two I didn't think he was open on. But he's 6'10", so he can get the shot off. Langford had a 3. Al Durham had a three off a reversal that was in rhythm. But other than that, I didn't think that they had really in rhythm looks from 3, and that the points were to be had in the paint, and that's what they did. And they attacked and they dominated in the paint for most of the game. So I just think that it's one of those things where, yeah, you want to shoot well from 3, you want to shoot well from the free throw line, but you also want to take what's given to you. And I don't know what their percentage was on twos, but it was insane today. It was so high.
Yeah, they were 24 of 38, whatever the math works out to on that. So probably 65-ish%. I mean, I would say
if you're shooting 65% from twos and you're getting those looks, continue to take them. Don't try and force a 3. And so I thought that they were having more success on the inside, so they kept going to the inside, and that was probably the smart strategy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that made sense. Second half, they only took 3, so that was a good adjustment for my eyes. 3 other quick stats to throw out from a team perspective: 5 blocks and plus 7 steals for IU. I think those are good solid numbers. Had some block shots at big moments there. Assists, though, only 9 for IU, only 2 in the second half. Both teams actually only ended up with the end of the game with 9 assists. So 9 assists on 27 makes for the game. Not ideal by any means, but I don't know that that's anything to sound the alarm on. And just to kind of underscore how close the game was, if this that I'm looking at is to be believed, 30 ties and 14 lead changes. So
it was a one possession game all day. Really, I mean, not necessarily points wise, but just felt like a one possession game. Like every possession was very important. And look, with a young Indiana team, this is a young Indiana team, particularly late when Morgan was out. They stepped up and won the game. I mean, I thought, I was thinking if Morgan's out, this is going to be a tough one to win, because where do you go other than Romeo for offense? Guys were smart about it, and they played well, and they played solid. And I'll tell you what, Indiana's defense late, the last 5 minutes, clamped down, and that's what won the game. They played very good defense, and that was impressive. And I tweeted out that the difference defensively for this team from 2 years ago is insane. It's such a turnaround. They guard the dribble. They close out to the perimeter. They know what they're doing on screens. I mean, for the most part, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to go under a screen, we should go over it, or vice versa, or whatever occasionally. But in general, they attack the offense defensively. They are very aggressive, and they play sound defense. And it's really impressive how well they can help and recover, how well they can close out to shooters, how well they guard the dribble. I really was impressed today with how well they played, particularly after such a tough game at Duke. They really bounced back today.
Yeah, for the second half, Northwestern shot 36.8% from the floor. IU only sent them to the line 4 times in the second half compared to 10 in the first half. Really did a better job of playing solid defense without fouling. So definitely agree with what you had to say there. So coming up on the assembly call, we're going to continue our breakdown of IU's 68-66 win over Northwestern. We'll talk about a guy who's been kind of a lightning rod for IU fans, and Justin Smith. Archie had some interesting comments about him after the game. So we'll hit those when we come back here on the assembly call. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night and Monday afternoon at our website, assemblycall.com. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 68-66 victory over Northwestern. And Ryan, we spent a lot of time on the show this week talking about Justin Smith. He finished the game 8 points, 2 of 5 from the field, 4 of 6 on free throws, only 1 rebound, 1 turnover, and played 18 minutes, got in some foul trouble in the first half. And Archie Miller talked about him after the game, said Justin Smith stepped up in the last 4 minutes. Quote, he's not playing as confident as he once was. We just have to trim him back down in terms of taking care of the ball. If he takes care of the ball, he'll be fine. So what were your thoughts on Justin's performance today? I think it was kind of uneven again, I would say, to say the least, where he had some moments that he, showed flashes of what he can do, had some moments where he struggled. But what were your thoughts on his play in its entirety over the course of the game?
The same. I thought there was some struggles there, but I also saw some bright spots. I saw him get the ball in the post, rip through, and go for a perfect layup. Just use his athleticism and his ability. And almost at that, it seemed like he wasn't thinking. He just instinct took over and he went right for the basket. And that was a positive. I saw him hit 4 out of 6 free throws when he's not a great free throw shooter. Hasn't been a great free throw shooter. I saw him step to the line and make some shots. I saw him play very solid defense. And I really thought that it was a better game for him. Yeah, Archie's right. The turnovers, he had a bad turnover today, but only one. He had some foul trouble that I didn't think was necessarily his fault. But I think it's baby steps for Justin Smith because this is a guy you need in the Big Ten. You're going to need him. And what he needs to focus on, he pulled up for a jumper late that I think he was kind of getting some confidence going. And he pulled up for a jumper late and didn't go in. It was a bad shot, but I think that was kind of a sign that maybe he was getting some of his mojo back. And then, of course, it came to a screeching halt because he missed it. But I think that, again, with Justin, as long as he doesn't make the mistakes, I think the other stuff is going to come. He had one drive today where he drove and pulled up fading away, and he's going to look at that in film and be like, what was I doing? Where he could have, he's so athletic. If he has that confidence, he can just go right at guys, and put the ball in the hoop. And that's what he's best at. And so I think it was a step forward for Justin Smith today. There was some bad, but I think that's stuff that can be cleaned up in film. Just like, hey, Justin, this is something you don't need to do. This is what we need you to do, X, Y, Z. What he's really good at and what Northwestern stopped is playing off the ball and cutting to the hoop and getting passes. Well, Northwestern really mucked up passing lanes all day, so he wasn't going to have that. We need to get him back to doing that thing where he's sort of in the short corner of the wing and cuts to the hoop behind guys. That's where he is most successful, and that's where he has been the most successful. Sort of that old Troy Williams back cut that we used to see a lot of. That really seems to get him going. And if he gets a couple of those early, he can really lock in. But I also thought he played pretty good defense today. And I think that's where it has to start for Justin, is just defending well and then let that extend into his offense and let him, sort of play from the back forward, play defensively well. And then whatever you contribute on offense is a positive, start building confidence that way. And I think we saw that today a little bit. A couple nice moves. He made a couple key free throws. I think that this is the start of hopefully a turnaround for him.
Yeah, I thought they tried to get him involved early in both halves. The first half, they ended up making a turnover. They sailed an entry pass over his head, and then he did get fouled on another play. I think Morgan was trying to hit him on one of those cuts, so he got fouled, but didn't end up shooting free throws in that case. And I think even early in the second half, he got a shot blocked at the rim. But it did feel like they made a concerted effort to try to get him involved, build a little bit of confidence with him. Had that one stretch where he took a bad shot as a runner, fouled a guy on a 3-point play, or to create a 3-point play, which was, if you want to get upset with Justin Smith, okay, that's a stretch that, yeah, you can be frustrated with what he's doing, but you also see a guy who is very clearly, just his body language coming off the court after that, he got taken out after he, fouled the guy on that 3-point play, and he was just, dejected, and you can just tell he's overthinking a lot of things, and he's just
right. That's the key. It's mental.
I mean, confidence wise, just right on the brink of not having it. And I will say, from manning the Assembly Call Twitter account today, there are certainly some people in the mentions that were, less than complimentary of his performance at times. But I do think he really stepped in down the stretch, made the layup, was in the right place on the press break, got an easy bucket, and hit some free throws in cases where other guys couldn't. He made both in a situation I think around the 5 or 6 minute mark when the game was really tight that he made some nice plays. I thought when he was aggressive, he was good. When he settled for, jump shot a couple times, it was not. But overall, I
And he's
thought
got a good shot. It's just right now that's not what he should be focusing on. He should be focusing on scoring 3 feet from the rim. And we've seen him hit threes, we've seen him hit jumpers before, but I think that right now with where his confidence is at, he needs to start working on the inside the paint.
Yeah, so two other guys I wanted to talk about. We'll hit Al Durham first, kind of sticking with the starters. Al ended up with 7 points, had 5, I think maybe by the first media timeout, or if not, it was 5 really early in the game. Hit a 3, was 3 or 4 from the floor.
Made
Got
a
himself
really nice reverse in the second half. That was
yeah, made some nice buckets, but got himself in foul trouble. Really limited his impact on the game because I thought he was, in a good spot being aggressive. But 4 fouls limited in 12 minutes. Any other kind of comments on his play? Anything that you saw him doing that really got him into those foul situations where, we kind of talked about this with Juwan. How does Al avoid some of those things when he's really a guy looking to come out and be aggressive on defense?
I honestly don't know because I thought 2 of the fouls were really bad calls. Shocking that I would think that, but I thought that in general with Al, I thought he played great defense. I thought he was so aggressive on the perimeter and just not letting guys get open shots and just all he has those ridiculously go gadget long arms that it's so funny when he bends down, he sticks his arms out. It looks like they're 10 feet long. It's crazy. But yeah, he gets in that defensive stance and puts his hand in a guy's face. And it feels like he's 20 feet away, but he's got his hand in the guy's face. But I thought that defensively, he was really impressive today. Avoiding screens, cutting through, following guys, trailing them, getting to where he needed to be and closing out. I just thought he was really good defensively. And we've always known defense was going to be his calling card. And I think that it was today. And I thought he was very good on the perimeter. And when you look at Northwestern, a team that can shoot the ball, shooting 29.4% from 3, 5 of 17, and a couple of those came in a row in the second half in a stretch. And one of those was a Vic Law banked 3 at the end that was just absurd. They really limited what Northwestern got, and they really limited good looks from Northwestern. The only thing Northwestern was getting was Pardon in the post. And really that's okay because Juwan Morgan was guarding him. He was doing a fine job, but Pardon had a good day. And he just, he was beating everybody. And he's a good player. And sometimes you're just going to get beat by a good player. No matter how well you play defensively, you're going to get beaten. So I thought that he was part of, forcing Northwestern off that 3-point line, forcing them into some shots that they didn't want. You saw a lot today, and something, again, that is a huge change from 2 years ago. You saw them facing late clock situations a lot because IU was guarding well. And I thought Al was a catalyst for that. He really was one of the guys really getting up into guys defensively and forcing them not only to not have open shots, but to feel like they have to give the ball up because they got nothing in front of them, and when a team is forced to pass the ball as opposed to passing it within their offense, but a guy gets it and has to give the ball up because he feels like he's pressured. That's exactly what happened. Again, that's kind of what happened to IU at Duke. They felt like they had to move the ball because they weren't going to have anything. Al was doing that to guys today, and I thought that was impressive. So nice game from him. Yeah, the foul trouble is a problem. They need to work on everybody avoiding fouls. I'm not sure how, other than just being invisible. But I think that it was a good game from Al, and I really liked some of the stuff that he showed today, particularly on the defensive end.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. This is Andy Bottoms with Ryan Phillips, and we're breaking down IU's 68-66 win over Northwestern. Ryan, wanted to kind of tag on to something you were talking about there defensively. Kind of looking at the numbers, Pardon was 11 of 15, so he played really well. I felt like Robbie Hummel was just screaming across the court to make him go right. And they did that a little bit better, I thought, at times in the second half. But if you look at everybody else on Northwestern, that makes them 16 of 46. So somewhere in the 34-35% range that IU held the rest of them to. And it was interesting because, a lot of times teams that play defensively, the way that IU does, we've seen IU, kind of double the post and go off of that at times. I thought they never really truly doubled Pardon. They would kind of scrape down with guys occasionally and try to do something, but they never really ran doubles at him. I don't know whether that's by design to try to take away, kickouts and things like that, basically forcing him to make shots to beat him. But anything stand out to you, that they did defensively that may have either led to his solid performance or the rest of the team's not so great performance?
Well, I think that doubling or not doubling probably actually is part of the reason that nobody else did anything. It's because he didn't have open outlets, and part of the reason they didn't double very well was because, or double very much, is because he was spinning to the middle a lot, and it's hard to double the middle of the floor. It's easy to double when a guy's on one side, but it's really hard to double when you're in the center of the floor because who comes to double? You have to decide who you leave, and either way you go, you're leaving a guy open too, but you have to decide between one side or the other who's going to be the guy that doubles. So it's difficult to do that. But I just think that a lot of times Pardon got the ball. I mean, he was also getting the ball at the top of the key and getting into the lane too. It wasn't just like he was back to the basket all game. I just think that Archie probably said, let's roll the ball out, go with Deron and Juwan Morgan on him and see what happens and see how it goes. That probably was the game plan. Like, we'll take you on our best player going one-on-one all game because probably whatever we give up, we're going to get back on the other end. And for the most part, that's what happened. Then Juwan went out late. Obviously, he finished with 17, Pardon at 24. But Juwan was 8 of 13 from the field too. So they both had really good days. And I think Morgan was most effective when he was going to the hoop today, of course, he's just so hard to stop in the post. I think it's the same for Pardon. He's just a tough guy to stop. But I thought that IU did a really good job stopping Ryan Taylor, making Vic Law shoot 14 shots to make 16 points and considering 3 of those points came on a banked 3 that was, a prayer at the end of the game. They made him work to score, and they made life difficult for Gaines as well, who was taking a lot of. He was 1 of 5, so they just made life difficult for those guys. And you'll take Pardon scoring the way he scores if it means that you shut everybody else down, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I want to talk to Ron quickly before we take a break. I thought he played well. I thought he played well against Duke. Played well in this game. Came in almost immediately, got an offensive rebound, got a bucket the possession after. Then got beat on defense, ended up getting in foul trouble. And Archie also mentioned after the game, kind of wishing that he had played Deron more in the second half. He was the guy who came in for Juwan down the stretch.
Yeah, he didn't play until like the 10-minute mark of the second half or something.
And even then, it wasn't for very long. So I was a little bit surprised because I thought he played well. It gave them a little bit different look on Pardon. Now, the flip side of that is what you talked about. Pardon would start some of his drives out beyond the basket, and that is not really the place that you want Deron defending. So I thought maybe that had a little bit to do with it. I'm not totally sure, but
it felt matchup dependent, and they don't really, and Northwestern doesn't really have a straight back to the basket. I mean, Pardon, but he plays out on the floor sometimes, but they don't have a straight 1-for-1 matchup with Deron. And I think that was part of the reason you didn't see him much in the second half. It just didn't feel like a fit in the flow of the game.
Yeah, I thought he would have really struggled to defend. I think it was, and the shots that Morgan got and what they did, I think IU had a good plan to really attack Pardon, knowing how important he was. Deron was certainly part of that, and had a nice basket against him in the first half. Ended up scoring both of his baskets, all 4 of his points in that half. But I thought it was another kind of solid showing for him. Continues to hopefully get back into shape, and certainly if Juwan is going to be out for any period of time, which post-game comments, Archie said he hadn't really even talked to the doctors yet about what was going on, so we're not going to know that until potentially much closer to the tip of the other game. But if Juwan's going to miss time, Deron becomes that much more important as you go forward, at least in a short-term capacity. So we'll see. But I think kind of continuing to build for him, and that's only a positive for IU. So coming up in our final segment, we're going to hand out our game ball. We'll take a quick look ahead to Indiana's next opponent. And then in the last call, we'll deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's 68-66 win against Northwestern. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we are wrapping up our breakdown of Indiana's 68-66 victory over Northwestern. And now we're going to hand out our game ball for the game. I think, really only 2 choices for IU probably make sense here in terms of Romeo and Juwan, although we would certainly listen to other options. But Ryan, I'll give you the floor first to hand yours out.
Yeah, it's Romeo Langford. He made just some big plays late down the stretch to get IU in, the win. And I thought that it wasn't all Romeo, but I thought that he was just clearly the go-to guy. And it didn't look like, the moment isn't too big for this kid. He just accepted it, took the ball off a screen, drove right to the hoop, laid it in. And I thought he was solid all day. And the way he attacks the hoop is just so impressive. Quite frankly, he is the most well-rounded smartest freshman I've seen at IU since I've been a fan. He is just so good, and it's impressive how good he is. And, finished the game with 20 points, also played great defense for the most part. I thought the second half particularly, he was fantastic. He finished with 20 points, 5 rebounds and assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, only turned it over twice in 36 minutes. Just a great performance from Romeo Langford. And look, this is the kind of performance you expect when you get a guy like Romeo, and he really showed out, and I thought he played great.
Yeah, I'm going to give mine to Romeo as well. This is not, I say this not to, kind of punish Juwan for missing the end of the game, but I think that basket by Romeo coming out of the under 4 timeout where, IU's down 3, their leader just gets helped off the court. I truly think if they don't make a basket there, I'm not sure that they win the game. And I think
Agreed.
Romeo really kind of made a little bit something out of nothing. They ran the shot clock down pretty far. He just had a nice drive and made the basket. And then, obviously makes the one, hits the 2 late to take the lead. Those are 2 huge baskets for IU over the course of the game. But I'm not sure if he doesn't, to me, he doesn't make that basket, whether Northwestern scores or not. I think it's just deflating for IU. So I thought,
it gives confidence to everybody else on the floor when you have a guy who's a closer. It really does.
Yep, absolutely. So Romeo gets our game ball. I believe if these totals that Jared has in the notes are correct, he now has the lead on the season 4-3 over Juwan. So we'll track that going forward.
So something tells me those guys are going to be battling for that throughout the season.
Yeah. The Duran Davis at 1 there may sit there for a while that way, and there may be nobody else who has one after that. But we'll monitor that throughout the season and see. But yeah, Romeo tonight is the guy, and certainly we hope Juwan is back and ready to go. So next game for IU is on Tuesday night against Penn State at Penn State. Penn State has been so far this season pretty tough to figure out, I guess you'd say. If you just look really over their last 4 games, they lost at DePaul in overtime, beat Wright State on a neutral floor, lost to Bradley on a neutral floor, and then they beat Virginia Tech at home. So tough to figure out. They go to Maryland today in a game that I would assume they would lose. Right now, they're 10th in adjusted defensive efficiency, though, on the season. So that is an area where if IU is without Juwan Morgan, finding a way to score is going to be a struggle against a team that's really solid defensively. Josh Reeves is a big part of that and what he does on the perimeter. So that'll be a test for IU's point guards, and can they get things going offensively in Happy Valley. Offensively, Penn State hasn't really been anything to write home about. They're 91st as I look at it now on Ken Palm adjusted offensive efficiency. Lamar Stevens carrying a lot of the offensive load with Tony Carr, leaving early last year. So a lot of Lamar Stevens, look for him, 6'8" junior. Again, not to keep beating the drum on whether Juwan's back, but that's a guy he would likely guard or have a big part in defending. So be interesting to see what he is able to do, how IU defends him. Probably Justin Smith may draw some of that assignment as well, even if Juwan is healthy. So certainly something to look at there. How well they defend him will be a big one. But, another conference game. I think if we've learned anything so far in this college basketball season, it's that every Big Ten game is going to be tough. Rutgers hung with Michigan State for a while on Friday night. Every game is going to be a slog. And I think that is, for certain at this point, a great opportunity for IU to go 2-0 in the Big Ten if they can find a way to win that game
and pluck a road win.
And to get a road win. Yeah, I mean, when we looked at this stretch early in the season, it didn't feel like a terrible stretch. Now, certainly, probably would have expected to beat Northwestern by more than 2, but a win is a win, and we'll kind of go forward from there. But so that's coming up on Tuesday. On Banner Monday, we'll discuss more of the Trace Jackson Davis signing. That really was a nice surprise on a Friday afternoon to know.
I love that Trace signed. I love that Trace signed during the early signing period and just kept it a secret. How awesome!
Didn't tell anybody. Yeah, yeah.
How did he keep that a secret? And credit to Indiana for not leaking it. Or for anybody in Indiana not leaking it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. Excellent at basketball. Also, apparently excellent at keeping secrets. So we've got that going for us with
heck of a poker player, apparently.
Yes, exactly. So we'll hit that, and then we'll obviously have the post game show after the Penn State game on Tuesday. So that's what's coming up with us. And remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off of your entire order at HoosierProud.com and at HomefieldApparel.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, go to HomefieldApparel.com. And if you want one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com. On both sites, use the promo code Assembly at checkout for 15% off of your entire order. And with that, we will we'll have last call here. Last call a bit early on a Saturday afternoon, Ryan, about noon for you on the West Coast. So perfect time for or I guess one. Perfect time for a last call.
Yeah. Close this thing out. I thought that the encouraging thing today was defensively for Indiana. I thought they played a very good team. It played very good team defense, particularly late in closing out the game. Also encouraging to see Romeo Langford really take over and just seem very comfortable in a tight game where you need a closer. He just seemed very comfortable being that guy and seemed like, all right, I'm taking it, going to the hoop, going to go right. It's almost like you put it on the floor. I'm going to go right there. I'm going to score, and there's nothing you can do about it. And seeing that kind of confidence from a young guy is really impressive. I can't overstate that enough. How impressed I am by him. Not just his basketball ability, but his smarts, the way he plays within a team concept, and then the way that he just mentally is prepared to take over games and attack, and just kind of be calm about it, not freaking out, and not seem like it's a big moment. He just makes it seem like he's playing his backyard. So that was encouraging for me today. And the other thing that was encouraging was the defense. And I thought they played very well defensively. Pardon went off on him. It was a tough cover for anybody. I think he's going to be a tough cover for a lot of people in the Big Ten this year. But I thought that in general, they played very well defensively.
Yeah, and for me, you want to look at a couple things and see how they respond to what happened at Duke. I think the defense was one that you mentioned. I thought that overall, short of what they did on Derek Pardon, which, as we talked about earlier, may have been a little bit by design. I thought they did a really good job defensively. And again, you take him out of the mix, and even with him in the mix, Northwestern did not shoot the ball well in the second half. Did not, IU really tightened up down the stretch. So you continue to see the makings of a good defensive team for IU. It's just a matter of stringing together that more often as you go. But I thought that was positive, and I thought the turnovers were positive. To come out and make 4 pretty quickly in the game was certainly not good. But if you look, by the time the game was over, they had 13, as we talked about. 5 of those come on offensive foul calls. Another one came at that play at the end of the half where Finney just gets hacked across the wrist, and somehow the my good friend Bo Borowski can see across the floor who the ball went out off of, but could not see him get, just smacked across the arm, like not the hand, like the wrist forearm area.
I had forgotten about that play, and now it's going to ruin my day.
I know, I did too, and it made me think about it. I just wanted to share that with everybody. But that's 6 of the turnovers. Again, some of those are probably legitimate. If you say that half of those are, that still puts you down to 10 turnovers for the game. That's good progress from a team that's still trying to figure out what its rotation is. I think you saw a little bit more of that today for the most part, with where guys really are starting to fit in to how Archie wants to use the guys that are at his disposal. So again, it was a second game with that you started and played most of the game with a relatively full complement of players. Certainly Juwan's status is something that we'll watch heading into the Penn State game. And, for a team that's already been, snake bitten by injuries, is one that you certainly worry about, but we'll kind of see what happens there. But I thought the team overall responded pretty well. I think there's work to be done offensively, that, still struggling at times to get shots. But clearly executed a plan of trying to get the ball in the paint and take advantage of the fact that that's where they can score, get to the free throw line, have to start making those free throws better. But, overall, we talked about this 4 games as a progression. And I kind of talked about this, in theory, was the easiest of the bunch. Now, that doesn't make everybody feel good. If you look and say, well, you won the easiest game by 2 points, what does that mean for the rest? But I do think there are things to build on that happened today, coming out of the Duke game and heading into these next 3 big games. And so, we talked about how do you get to 2-2, 3-1 during the stretch. Starting 1-0 certainly helps that, and I think that's a positive. And we'll, hope for a continued progression from these guys. Hopefully Archie and the staff can continue to work with Justin Smith, get him back where he needs to be, and hopefully Juwan is healthy for Tuesday night. So we'll talk about that certainly on Banner Monday, and then we'll see what happens in the game on Tuesday night. So we'll be here to break it all down after that. So that will do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Assembly Call. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Monday afternoon. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. All right. That will do it. So thanks everybody for being here. The chat looked to be hopping. I could not pay attention to it while still keeping up with anything else that I was doing and trying not to screw up. But
by the way, if you think some of the IU guys took some bad shots today, like people were ripping on Justin Smith or whatever, Zach Norvell Jr., by the way, Gonzaga's in a dogfight with Creighton. Looks like they're going to win, but Zach Norvell Jr. is 6 of 17 from 3.
Oh,
6 of 17. He's taken 21 shots and 17 have been behind the 3-point line. That's not good.
That's my kind of guy. You want to limit the amount of running that you're doing. So if you never go inside the 3-point line, you can really set yourself up to cut down on some mileage that you might put under across the court. So that's good. I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? So all right. Well, wins a win. Hopefully Juwan's okay, and see what happens from there.
Yeah. Pray, folks. Just pray.
Yes. Exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Ryan you'll be on Banner Monday, and I will chat with you and I think Coach Tuesday for the for the postgame show. So have a good weekend, everybody. Enjoy the rest of it, and we'll be back on Monday.
Later, guys.